Welcome to Victim to Victory, the Personal Injury Playbook, the podcast to navigating the complex legal system after an injury. We bring you the expert insights and guidance you need to navigate the legal system with confidence, help you make informed decisions, and get the compensation you deserve. Don't let insurance companies take advantage of you. This podcast is designed to empower you with the knowledge you need to protect yourself and your loved ones. So sit back, relax, and let's start exploring the world of personal injury law together.
Welcome to the Personal Injury Playbook. Today we're joined by Bill Biggs, a culture architect and leadership strategist at Vista. He's also the Chief Team and Culture Officer at Poly Hockey in Giordano. With his unique perspective on culture and ability to inspire and multiply leaders, Bill has become one of the most innovative thinkers in the law firm leadership by reshaping firms across the country. He's also the founder of the Law Firm Leadership Summit and host of Transforming the Culture of Law podcast. He's also the president of Bill Biggs and Associates, where he works with high-value sports professionals and helps them with their abilities to brand and network in the community. How are you doing today, Bill?
I'm doing great, Lawrence. That was a great intro there. Somebody made me sound really good.
That's because you are. Full disclosure, Bill has worked with me, and he's also been a consultant with the law firm of Garces, Graveler, and LeBrocq. The gentleman is a wealth of knowledge in the field of law and the practice of personal injury law throughout the country. So, Bill, with that intro, can you tell us more about your background and how you became a culture architect and leadership strategist?
Yeah, those are interesting titles, right? Not that you can go and get a degree in culture architecture and leadership strategist. I actually made up those titles myself when I joined forces with Vista. Really, those concepts or those titles and the preparation for that came from years and years of leadership in industry and business and being an entrepreneur and then moving into the law firm space. And over the years, just realizing that organizations, just like people, they can have high performance or low performance, and there's factors that are involved in that, and that there has to be some intentionality about how you design a law firm and how you look at performance and how you look at building something so that it's going to perform at a high level. And so when we came up with the idea of culture architect and leadership strategist, really that just says you want to do this by design. Culture is by design. You want to be intentional about what you're building in people and in the organization. And the more intentionality you can have in there, and the more you can look to the future with some vision and say, what do we want out of our organization? How do we get there? Usually the more success you'll find.
So how important do you think it is to have a positive company culture for the success of a law firm?
Well, for me, that's the lens through which I view the whole thing. I consider culture to be, I often say it's not just breakfast tacos on Friday. It's really a manifestation of the values of the leadership and of the organization. And so to me, culture is king. It comes first because it determines really everything you do and how you do it. So it determines the way you hire people, the way you train, the way you treat your clients. It determines your approach to your practice. It's everything. And if you can get that right, and if you can define it well and learn how to implement it well and maintain it, grow it, then I think it's the number one key to success, not just in a law practice, but in any organization.
Throughout your years of experience, how can law firms create a culture of inclusivity and diversity in the workplace?
Well, I think my mantra for leadership is love your people, demand high performance. And I don't shy away from that term, love your people, that word love. And I think that what I mean by that is treating your people with a genuine level of care, really looking out for their best interests as often as possible. And that includes and that encompasses diversity and inclusivity, bringing people into your organization that are from different backgrounds. They bring a different experience. I think that enhances the beauty of the organization. It enhances the overall intelligence and experience of the organization. And so I think it's a critical piece.
Well, how can the leaders of a law firm, other than loving their team members, help their team members perform at their best?
That's a big question. We all want every one of our team members to perform at their best. There's a lot that goes into that. First, hiring the right people that fit your organization well, and then onboarding, the right onboarding, great training, establishing a great culture, making sure that your team members are empowered, that they feel that they have the tools and the things necessary. I'm a believer in the concept of high autonomy, high expectation. Don't micromanage them, but give them high expectations and give them the tools necessary. So, there's also structures that are important to that. So are you doing things to give them ongoing training? Are you doing things to make sure they feel appreciated? Do you have structures in place to make sure that they're growing and developing? Is the communication rhythm of the organization healthy so that the team members understand what's going on and they feel a sense of security knowing where the organization is headed and how they fit in? So if you want to maximize performance, it's not just, honestly, it's not easy. It takes work, it takes structure, it takes deliberate action. But if those things are not rocket science, they can be done. And if you do them, if you're intentional about doing them, then I think you can really drive the performance of your team and not only have them be high performers, but they'll love working there too.
Right. And when you have high performers, how does that affect the client base and the people that are choosing a successful law firm to represent them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, it has a huge impact. And I would put that performance in two categories for the client in terms of what they're looking for and how it impacts them. Number one, obviously, we all think about, we want our clients to have good performance and service from our team in terms of the team's legal decision-making, the lawyer's ability to do their job, how well do they perform at their craft. That's critically important for the outcome for the client. But the other piece is how well, it's almost the bedside manner piece, how well do we perform when it comes to things like communicating with the client, making the client feel that we strongly advocate for them, making the client feel a sense of trust in that relationship. You can get a really great outcome for a client, but if they feel like they've been neglected and not talked to, we all know that communication is big for clients, then you may not get that future referral. So I think the performance element and the impact on clients has to be, not only are we getting them a good result and doing it efficiently, but also are we doing it in a way that builds trust, builds relationship with them. A lot of times that has a huge impact on what they're going to say, either on social media or to their sphere of influence, and whether or not we're going to get the referral in the future or whether they're going to say bad things about us out there in the public.
Yeah, I've heard that it's not, the attorneys are always worried about the outcome, where the clients are more concerned with how you make them feel. And that has a lot to do with the communication aspect involved in the relationship between the attorney and the client. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, the number one issue when clients are surveyed, the number one issue they have or complaint that they have as it relates to work with a personal injury or a workers' comp law firm is communication or lack thereof. I don't know who my attorney is. I haven't heard from my attorney. My attorney doesn't return my calls. That is the number one thing. And so we've got to, hear that. We got to listen and understand that those clients, this is an unfamiliar process for them. They didn't come to us because something good happened in their life. They came to us because they had a traumatic event. They're hurt. They're cautious. They don't know what to think about lawyers. So I think it's our responsibility to build trust, and that has to be through communication. And so in all the firms that I work with, and something that I think is extremely important, I would say, look, especially attorneys, because of such the incredibly important role that attorney plays with that client, the weight that title of attorney has, it's critically important that we see our responsibility is to build the trust through communication, and to not see the client as a nuisance, to not see the client as an annoyance, to not see the client as the problem, but rather this client, is how we make our living. We should appreciate, respect, and care for them rather than see them as, a problem because they've called us over and over again.
Can you share some examples of successful strategies you've implemented to improve the culture of the law firms you've worked with?
Yeah, so I think there's some, again, these things aren't necessarily easy to do, but they can be done with some intentionality. And if you set out and say, I want better culture, I want healthy culture in my firm. So some of those things are, number one, working with the firm to define it. What is it that you want? What is your culture? How can it increase your ROI? How can it increase the success of your firm? So define it, decide what you want from your culture, kind of build that out so that you have a plan, a picture of that. And then literally it starts with some of the practical things. It's training the leadership to implement that culture. It's hiring process. I always say one of the biggest pieces in all of this is, how are you hiring people, and who are you hiring, and what are your standards, and what's your process for making sure that that person is truly a fit with your organization and is going to be successful. So for me, I put a really big emphasis on hiring as it pertains to the health of your culture. And then beyond that, it's the training, it's the reinforcing structures within your system. And for me, another piece that fits all of that is leadership development. Most firms are underdeveloped when it comes to their leadership structures. They don't have enough leaders. It's way too dependent on just a couple of individuals. And as the firm grows, that becomes unmanageable, or the management, the leadership becomes, it's impossible because one person can't do it and everything centers, one person becomes the hub and you got 120 people that are looking to one person. It can't work. So I think leadership development plays a huge role in culture development, because that leader, that key leader, say the CEO or the managing partner, they need to be able to reproduce themselves, multiply themselves into other leaders, and that needs to basically flow down. And so the more good leaders you develop in a firm, those people are hearing and receiving from the top leader or top leaders their vision of the culture. And now you've got other people that are in a position of influence that can spread, the gospel of good culture. So leadership development structures, another piece. So there's a lot of things. There's a method, right? There's a science to implementing and growing strong culture in a firm.
And how does that strong culture benefit the victims of auto accidents or workplace injuries? How does that benefit them?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think what a lot of people would think is that when we talk about the benefit of culture, it's feel good stuff. And it is so much more than that. In fact, it's a lot more tangible than just emotionally feel good stuff, although that's a part. Of course, good culture, if you've got good people with good values that love doing this work, if they are interfacing with your clients, then they're going to do a good job. As long as they've got the right workload and the right training, they're going to do a good job of helping the client feel the right way, right? That what we just mentioned earlier, that, how's the client feeling? Do they feel communicated with? Do they feel heard? Is there trust? So there's going to be that element for sure. But there's also going to be great culture will impact the results. What I mean by that and how that impacts the client is, I believe particularly in a PI or workers' comp firm, and plaintiffs' work, aggression on behalf of our clients is critically important. High levels of skill and aggression to get our clients what they deserve is part of culture, right? So I want to hire people that understand, that they are passionate about this work, or they can become passionate about this work. That comes with some aggression towards the insurance company, towards the defense, right? So that usually almost always results in better recovery, in more recovery for the client. So great culture, right? If I've got the right values, right people working, they're passionate about what they do, they're going to get a better result, and the client's going to enjoy that process even more. So for me, great culture typically results in a client feeling great about their experience with us and their communication and their relationship, but also putting, more recovery in their pocket at the end of the day, tangibly a better result.
So let's take a little bit of a turn here. Let's talk a little bit about technology and how that's affected the practice of law and the industry's culture and leadership strategies. What is the effect on the newer technology that's out there?
Sure. Obviously, it's affecting everything, and I always think technology, it's a tool, and it's here. It's going to continue. There are going to be changes. Our world is constantly changing, and so I don't see it as either good or bad. It's a tool. It's what we do with it, and so I prefer, and I think the best way is to look and say, how can we leverage these tools, these platforms of technology, to do the things that are important to us, to reinforce the values that are important to us, as the context evolves. In other words, people working remotely or whatever the case may be. So as an example, technology enables us to do this Zoom, right? Or to do this podcast. So we're able to talk about culture. Anybody in the world can listen to this and can access it. And if there's something valuable that we share, then they can turn around and implement it. That's powerful. That is the speed of communication and the availability and accessibility of good information means that you can improve culture. You can improve things about your firm. You can communicate better with your clients. You can have face-to-face meetings with your clients. With almost every client we have is going to have the ability, and in fact, probably would prefer to have a meeting on our phone, looking at each other. If we say we don't want just a phone call, we'd like to see them, they can probably do that pretty easily. They're probably better at it than we are. So technology now can be leveraged to actually build a better relationship with the client, to build better relationships with team members, because we can have, connected face-to-face meetings. Yet the other side of that is the whole reason we're needing to do that is because now we say, oh, well, we're going to work remotely. So we're not together as much anymore in person, which may have some, negative impacts in terms of building culture. So I think it's a question of, do we say, look, here's the world we live in, here are the challenges that we have. Let's take these tools of technology and utilize them, optimize them for the purposes that we have to reinforce the values that we have. And I think there's net gain with that. I think, there's issues. Some people aren't going to always like it. For instance, I'm an in-person guy. I'd rather, get to know my team or my client in person, but realizing that that's, not always the world that we live in. Utilizing technology allows us to be able to see face to face and do things in that manner. So I think it's a net gain. It's a good thing, and we've got to embrace it or we'll get left behind.
One last question before we start talking a little bit about personal injury victims. What advice would you give the law firm leaders who are struggling to create a strong culture in their organizations?
Well, this may be a little challenging advice or feedback, but it starts with me as well. One of my mantras is every problem is a leadership problem. And so my encouragement to leaders in firms, whether that be owners or C-suite executives, managing attorneys, even mid-level leaders, is first, you've got to look at you. First, you've got to take a step back and not be a victim to whatever your current culture is, to whatever challenges you have in a firm. You probably have had a hand in creating them, and you've got to take responsibility for where your organization is at. And I don't say that harshly. I think that's critical for all of us. And I actually, rather than that being a burden, I actually believe that's a liberating process, because once you embrace that, you know what, I lead this organization, and whatever it is, whatever it becomes, whatever it's been, a lot of that has to do with me. That's liberating in the sense that you realize that you have some influence, and that influence comes with both responsibility, but also opportunity and privilege. And so my encouragement to all law firm leaders is to say, if your organization is not what you want it to be, if it's not where you want it to be, then take a step back and decide how you have had a part to play in that, and then figure out how you need to get better, how you need to grow as a leader, so that you can get and help create the organization that you want. It starts with us, always starts with us.
Now let's go on to some of the personal injury victims, somebody that's been injured. How can a personal injury victim find the right lawyer to represent them for their case?
Well, number one, that's critical. The first thing you do if you've been injured, obviously, other than call an ambulance, call 911, make sure that you go above and beyond to get the medical care that you need. Don't sign anything from the insurance company on the other side in any way whatsoever. In fact, I would encourage you not to have conversations with insurance companies until you speak with a lawyer. That's the first thing, right? Know that you need a lawyer. All the research, everything says you're going to be in a much better situation as a victim in a personal injury situation if you will contact a lawyer than if you try to go it alone. So first thing is be committed to doing that. And then the next thing is, there's usually people do this two ways, and now it's combining. A lot of folks are going to get on Google or they're going to get on a search engine and they're going to look for personal injury lawyers in their area that have strong ratings, and that's valuable. You need to do that. Obviously, referrals and talking to friends and family who you trust, who have had good experiences with a lawyer, if they have gone through a similar situation, is valuable as well. But I would say you need to do your research. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to several firms, but get online and find out, are these firms, what do people say about them? What do their clients say about them? And then call and talk to a lawyer or talk to a law firm and make sure that, you feel like there's a right fit for you. But the number one thing is, above all else, don't go it alone. Call a lawyer. You need to do that.
What are some other common mistakes that personal injury victims make? You mentioned not speaking to the insurance company, because a lot of times they don't realize the insurance companies are their enemy. They're not their friend. But what are some of the other pitfalls that personal injury victims can fall into?
Yeah, great question. I think along with the number one pitfall, not calling a lawyer, that is tied to, as you said, not trusting the insurance company. They're not your friend. Just remember, the only way they make money is to get your premiums and to not pay out when you're hurt on a claim. So that their business model is not designed to help you in any way. But I would say the next pitfall that most personal injury victims need to be aware of is not advocating strongly for their own health, for their own well-being. When you are the victim of a wreck or some type of injury that is the fault of someone else, you deserve to be brought to wholeness, and you deserve to get the best medical care, the necessary medical care in the future that maybe as a result, let's say you get, a serious back injury. Well, it's likely that back injury is not just, it's not just the healing that you go through immediately, after that event, but you're going to have very likely ongoing issues in the future because of that incident, because of that wreck. Well, you deserve for those future issues to be considered in your recovery. And so advocating for yourself and understanding that you're actually, the way I look at it as that you need to work with your attorney to make sure you get brought to wholeness and stay with that process. Make sure you get the treatment and the medical care that you need. And if you're still hurt, if you're not better, or if it's likely that you're going to have future issues, that you not be in a hurry, not be in a rush to get the process over with, because the insurance company is banking on that. Literally, they're banking on it. They want you to be fatigued. They want you to get exhausted by the process so that you will ultimately settle for less than what you deserve.
Now, what should a personal injury victim do if they feel their lawyer is not representing them effectively or zealously?
Yeah, and sadly that does happen. First, they need to have a strong conversation with their attorney. Sometimes it's just miscommunication. Sometimes it is a lack of communication, and I think they need to reach out to their attorney and make sure that they sit down, maybe face to face, maybe in person, but get a conversation and figure out what's going on and determine whether or not, that there's a good fit there. I always say this, look, even though I never, at the firms that I work with, I never want us to lose a client. At the end of the day, it's their case, it's their life, not ours. They've entrusted us with this issue in their life. Ultimately, they have, the victim, the client now has the choice to take their case elsewhere if they want. And so if you're the victim of a personal injury and your attorney is not providing the care and the service that you believe you deserve, you have a right to take your case, to leave that attorney and go to another attorney to get better care.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Bill Biggs, one of the great minds in the legal community, for developing leadership and the way that translates through culture and the way that translates to more effective litigants representing victims of personal injury. Thank you so much for your time, Bill.
Lawrence, appreciate you, man. You're an all-star. I love what you're doing, and thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right, Bill, we're off.
Thank you for tuning in to Victim to Victory, the Personal Injury Playbook. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and helpful as you navigate the complex legal system. If you or someone you know suffered from a personal injury, don't hesitate to reach out to us at 1-800-489-0004. Our team is here to help take you from victim to victory. Remember, taking legal action after a personal injury is a critical step in protecting your rights and securing your future. So don't wait. Make the call today and let us help you fight for the compensation you deserve. We'll be back next week with more expert insights and information.
This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. The content of this podcast is based on the laws and regulations of the United States and may not be applicable in other jurisdictions. Additionally, any information shared on this podcast is not protected by attorney-client privilege or any other type of confidentiality. Remember, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice.